Looks like we got that Monday bounce in the SPY that we were talking about, and we're going to show you guys how we saw that coming. And we're also going to do even more technical analysis for the SPY, Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, and Nvidia. Okay, so stick around for all of it. We're even going to touch on the VIX at the end, so make sure to stick around for that. Let's get into it. So we are getting a green bar today, right? We're getting that green bar here. And the overall thing that I wanted to point out, looking at the chart on the daily here on the SPY, is that even though I do use a 9-day moving average, this will be this red line that is starting to come down. We do like to revert back to the 5-day moving average, which is sitting right where we closed as of right now. So if we close, if you pull up a 5-day moving average, you're going to see that we're actually closing pretty much directly on it. So right now we have a decision to make on the market. Are we going to go to dip lower to find some more buyers, or are we going to get above that 5-day and see some kind of bigger bounce? Now, before we move on to shorter time frames, overall, I just wanted to say that we do have that divergence still sitting down here on the MACD, and that does prove itself as well on the RSI. Now, it's not the most significant of divergences, but it can lead to some kind of bounce here. And are we going to see that continue right now, or are we going to dip to lower levels and find some buyers when we are hitting that 5-day moving average? So let's get into the smaller time frames and how we saw this bounce coming for at least Monday. Okay, that's how I kind of described today's bounce was in my last video, was just we're going to probably see a bounce on Monday because we do have some pretty significant divergences. Okay, so we do have this 30-minute up right now. And if I just look at this flat, right, we can see that the price is coming down and down. But as we pull up the MACD here, we can see that we actually have some sort of triple divergence right here. So we do have this divergence between these lows here, and we even have a second divergence right here with that overall divergence. Okay, so we have 3 divergences setting up there, and then we also see that as well on the RSI. So if you go back on the RSI, you can see we are extremely, extremely oversold. We actually see all that divergence across the board between all these lows. So we thought that a bounce would be likely for today. But is this bounce going to last? I just wanted to say I'm not necessarily convinced that this is the actual, bottom as of right now. I do believe we could see some more work. We do have some sort of, some sort of wedge forming here, and we could see this fall out, maybe go fill this gap, and then maybe we could see some more buyers come in. So look forward to that. But overall, we do want to be paying attention to our weekly risk ranges. Okay, so these risk ranges here are pretty important. And as you can see, it looks like we're starting to head, at least right now, upward towards the top of that range. That would be this purple line right here. And this is just what the options have priced in for the week. So if we do see ourselves get excited, possibly actually before that Jerome Powell release, we could actually suspect that he might be giving us some kind of bad news, or maybe just not the news that people are looking for to bring us back into these risk ranges here. So they're very important. Now, this yellow one is the monthly expected move, and that's why we overall were with the divergences that I just pointed out, leaning towards a bounce on Monday. This is what options have priced in for the whole month of October, and so they will want to close back in this. But it doesn't mean that tomorrow we can't see some kind of rapid sell-off and then come back into it over the next day or so. Now the Qs here, what I really wanted to point out was, yes, we are getting that upward move. Yes, we are getting the move to get that retest that we were talking about, right? Like, we run into those sellers right at that retest and we start to sell back off. We have that 5-day that's sitting right there. So there's a lot of things going on here. Now, we did violate this wedge here. So right now I kind of want to redraw things. And when I redraw things and we go to lower levels, a lot of the time, if I'm expecting maybe some kind of continuation, or I'm just trying to prepare in case stocks start to recover and want to head in a different direction than they're heading, right? We're coming down. We want to see where they could hold up to go higher, right? We want to see where we could find that bounce. I do like to just clone whatever the top is here and then kind of just line it up with a point. Okay, let's line it up. Maybe this is our flag that we are going to get here, right? This could be some sort of flagging. And the thing is, if we're thinking about this from an investment standpoint, let's say we're an investor, not necessarily a trader, a lot of investors like to step in at this 200-day moving average. And now we can see that this flag might line up with that area. And we could say, hey, maybe there is more work to be done here, because if I was an investor and I know how important this 200 is, because the last time that we actually broke this 200 was way back here in 2022. And you can see what happened when we did break that level. We headed to extremely low levels. Okay, so a lot of investors, at least I would say ones that are kind of trying to be a little bit careful in the climate that we're in right now, would maybe like some kind of actual test of this 200-day moving average before they feel more comfortable investing into the future. Now, when we were talking about the Qs yesterday, yes, I did add these ranges, okay? I did add your ranges in here, so you can notice that if I do draw up that channel, right, or that flagging on the daily, we actually see that it is, lining up kind of around that weekly expected move. So any kind of downward pressure here, which we can see that as of today, I do believe this still could be considered a flag of its own on a 30-minute chart. We will start to maybe break down to lower levels at this point if this low is cut, okay? We can get a test of that 200. Investors might be able to be a little more confident taking an investment into the future. But in our last video, we did discuss how the SPY is actually making a downward move while the Qs are making that upward move. So with the divergences, and with that monthly expected move on the SPY there, and with the Qs diverging from the SPY at the same time, we just wanted to say that on Monday, we're most likely going to see a bounce. It doesn't mean that the work to the downside isn't done, right? We may need to head to lower levels one more time to find some more buyers. Right now, I'm open to both scenarios. I would be a little bit worried for the market going into Apple earnings and going into the Fed interest rate decision if we start to get outside of this weekly range before that, if those events come out, before that data comes out, we could be in a little bit of an oversold or overbought position, which could lead to this wanting to come back into this zone with some kind of bad news. Now, as we get into Apple, I just wanted to state that I am still leaning towards those probabilities. The probabilities are still telling me that we are going to see some kind of pause from the Fed at this point. You may not be hearing that a lot right now, but I overall just wanted to talk about Apple and talk about all these individual stocks because they're doing some cool things. Now, we have been talking about on this channel, if you've been subscribed, and thank you for subscribing, because we've been talking about how important this purple zone is for Apple right now. And you can see that we were talking about this back, even back here, Thursday, 28th of September. Okay, so 28th of September, we see these bars and we said, okay, if Apple wants to break down, it first has to close outside of this purple zone. And it failed to do it multiple times, right? It tested the bottom, it tried to break through it, but it always closed back in it, which then led to another push higher. Those buyers stepped in. We came out of our Bollinger Bands, we hit our little trend line here, and then we see this sell-off, okay? So the bottom of this zone is very important. And you can see on this bar right here, Monday, October 23rd, we see that buying back up. We're holding back of it. But once we start to actually break the 200 at the same time, we get a sell-off of almost 3% if you include this wick here. Now, what is important about noting all of this is what did we do today? We attempted to get back into that purple zone, which is something that we talked about on the shorter time frames. We just said, hey, it looks like we could get some kind of test, because a lot of the time when you do break out of a zone like this, you do get some kind of retest of it to then head to lower levels. So that is still a possibility at that point. And right now you can see that purple zone, we are actually closing just beneath it. So we are beneath the 200. We are beneath that purple zone. I do believe that that just tells us that we can't get, greedy on this. We can't get too bullish too quickly. There could be a little bit more work to be done this week in order to give us some kind of bull run for the rest of the year. As I pull up a 30-minute, you can see that we gapped higher and we kind of held at those levels, okay? We held up above that original gap open, okay? And we headed up into that purple zone. You see this reaction from that purple zone. We go up in it one bar and then we sell off in the next one. We go up in it and we sell off in the next one. So once we do hit this zone, we do start to see those sellers step back in. And if this is able to break this little mini trend here, if we do start to head down, this MACD is going to curl over. And this is something that I'm bringing up in my course that a lot of my friends are liking, because I'm letting them, see some of the videos early. They overall like the fact that on the MACD, I'm pointing out the importance of this center line, the importance of this positive and negative territory, and how the trend is still down if we are in negative territory. That would be down here where these red bars start to show up, okay? So what I wanted to point out here is if we do get a rollover, you would then quickly become inside of that negative territory, but maybe that sell-off is short-lived and we see some kind of bounce here, okay? So if we do see that divergence with price action maybe heading into lower levels, we could see a divergence set up. Now, that is a big theoretical thing. We don't know what could happen. We could see the reversal start from here and start to see, a bounce higher into this purple zone. So On the bullish side, if you want to be bullish at this point, I do believe you need to at least reclaim and stay in this purple zone. And then to the bearish side, if we do start to roll over and break this little mini trend, I would really be paying attention to this low. If that low starts to break, I would definitely look for a test of the bottom of this big wedge on the daily that we were looking at. Okay, I would really think that we would want to come into lower levels to then find some buyers in order to project higher. On Tesla, I didn't necessarily have some levels marked out in this big area that we could find support. So we are breaking this low that we were talking about. It's pretty important, but we had this huge zone. That's this whole area in here, right? So I wanted to find a point where we could find some buyers. Overall, I believe that point would be this spot right here, 190.10. And the reason I'm finding that is just because it's in confluence with a few times that we've had to hold up, right? So we can see we held up right here, we held up right here. And when we were able to break through that pretty confidently, we got a big run, okay? So I do believe that the point that you could be looking for within this big range here is actually right below us. It could be this 190.10 area. It could hold up as support. If it doesn't, I do believe that you could still hold up within here, but I believe the most important point to look for is that 154.78. I just wanted to point this out for Tesla traders. This is a very, very important week. You are starting to break a 200 and a 50 on a weekly chart at the same time right now with this bar. So if we do see this close below this, this might tell some algorithms to start selling Tesla, and you can see this get a rapid decline. Now, I'm not necessarily leaning towards that right now. I do believe Tesla has potential to make a recovery here, but we would need other stocks to perform. We're going to need Apple to have good earnings, and you're most likely going to really need a pause from the Fed to see Tesla make back some ground. The surprising thing for me was Amazon. Amazon actually did see a big reaction here, getting across a confirmation of this divergence here on a daily. Okay, so you're getting a confirmation of these divergences down here, and we can see that from there we're going to see some good buying pressure. So the fact that we did close back into our wedge here, I thought that was going to be important, and maybe we need to just dip down a little bit to find some more buyers. Looks like people are pretty excited about Amazon, which kind of makes sense. If we really look back, we can see that Amazon's one of the stocks that never really recovered, right? So 189 up here was the high, and we're down at levels still around 132, okay? So we really want to pay attention to that. The important thing for Amazon right now is it did actually retake that 50-day moving average, which is pretty impressive. But you notice we are now in that zone. Okay, we're in this gap fill, gap resistance area. Okay, so we could see sellers step in here, but maybe, just maybe, that is actually just some kind of retest. Okay, we could get a retest here and then start to head to higher levels. But right now, I just wanted to inform you that you do have a full divergence confirming on a daily chart right in front of you. But I do believe if you want to pay attention if the actual crash is going to happen, I think Nvidia is a good stock to watch right now. I did draw this little trend that's kind of a little wonky right now. Let's just fix that a little bit. Now we can see this little trend here, and it's just a little mini trend, okay? Nothing too serious at this point, but I do believe that if Nvidia is able to cross down through this red line and close at these levels, I don't believe it will hold up at that 200 because it is sitting within that gap. But you're noticing the 200 is getting closer and closer to this red line, so it could hold up at that point. But we want to pay attention to these lows here. If we do start to close below those lows, I do believe it will be a good indication that pretty much the whole market might want to head to lower levels. But right now we are seeing that hold up in this area, which is something we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now. We were expecting it to hold up in this area because now we have a divergence forming on both the RSI and the MACD at the same time, which is something I really like. And we could see an upward move if we start to get good news with Apple earnings and that pause that I'm leaning towards. So is Nvidia able to turn around right now? And the answer to this isn't too simple, but you can see little indications that it really wants to start to recover some good ground and get a good bounce here because of the 2 hour. Okay, the 2 hour here, you do see this divergence that is starting to form, and it actually did confirm, what is that? That actually confirmed early this morning, or not necessarily early, almost in the afternoon, but 11:30 this morning, it did start to confirm, and we could see this have some kind of move behind it. Now, this does not mean that it has to go up from this area. We could easily see a little bit more of a dip down to push to lower levels to then project us higher, and that would set up a little triple divergence down here on the RSI. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Nvidia does, and I believe you can look at this stock to kind of dictate what the whole market is going to do, which is pretty crazy. But you got to think there is so much money in Nvidia right now. There's so much trading going on with it that if it starts to lose levels, the market's really going to suffer. If you did miss last episode, we were talking about how I'm leaning towards this pause. And the overall reason I'm leaning towards this pause is because Jerome Powell did say himself that bond traders could be doing his job a little bit for him. They're pushing these rates a little bit higher before he even makes any kind of decisions. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't see one more push to test this high one more time and then start to break down. It doesn't mean we can't beat that high and create some kind of little triple divergence before we head lower. It's just right now, it really looks like this wants to start to head to lower levels with those divergences. So the fact that it would head lower, we have to have a reason for it to head lower. And that might mean that we're going to get some kind of data that tells us that these rates need to come down. And what could that data be? It could be a Fed rate decision. And that's all I'm talking about. And I do believe a lot of people are saying, hey, rates are going to go higher, rates are going to go higher. When everyone is saying rates are going to go higher, they usually start to go lower. Okay, so we are paying attention to this, and we'll look at TLT as well. So the main thing on TLT we were talking about last episode is just the divergence between the SPY, right? The SPY was heading to lower levels while TLT actually held up. So we were seeing that as a good sign for a bounce on Monday, but it doesn't mean that right now we can't see those rates go a little bit higher or a retest of this level of about 82.50 in order to really see before we get that Fed rate decision if we are going to get some kind of pause. Now, if we do get some kind of pause, you can see we've been in this little channel. I talked about in the past how I could see a future head and shoulders setup, okay, up here at this level. Maybe we do get some kind of big reaction in TLT over the next couple months, and then we see a little bit of a push down to create some kind of right shoulder. You'd have your left head, right shoulder, but this would mean that rates will end up going down soon, right? If this actually played out, we would see those rates start to come down pretty dramatically. And what would that mean? That would probably mean that the Fed would have to cut at that point. So I don't know if I'm necessarily leaning towards that, but I just wanted to show you guys a possible scenario that could happen in the future. As of tomorrow, you are going to want to pay attention because this could start to break out of this channel, right? So that would be the bullish thing for TLT. And then it also could, though, it could come down and retest this high, this low here at 82.50 before we start to break out or get some kind of pause. I left the last thing as the VIX because I feel like we're getting a pretty good signal here that we could see that bounce, right? We're starting to see a closing bar beneath the 20, okay? Beneath this reading of 20, like we said, bad things happen when the VIX is above 20. I just kind of redrew my trends here because it really wasn't, making sense with everything. So we do have kind of a little expanding wedge, if you would. I don't necessarily use expanding wedges very often, but what we can notice from this is we are getting a daily bar to close beneath a reading of 20 in the VIX. That is a good sign that this market wants to go higher, but this MACD has not rolled over yet. So you do have divergences here on the RSI. You don't necessarily have that on the MACD, but if this is able to roll over, I think we will get some kind of bull run. Now, we want to be open to the fact that we are still right around 20. We could see some kind of reaction during the day tomorrow or even in the next day that could get us above 20 and give us another point of reference between some of these highs. I'm not necessarily leaning towards that. I believe this closing below 20 is pretty significant, but I do still think during the day tomorrow we could see some selling to give us another, bar that maybe gives us a wick down. I'm paying attention for when this MACD actually crosses. I believe that that's the signal that this divergence on the RSI is confirming, and we could see some downside. I have this little trend here to also mark as important. If we start to sell off pretty rapidly, then I'm really expecting a good bounce in the market. Now, on the VIX, we do want to pay attention in case there is a crash. It's very important to be open to all scenarios, but I can have the things that I'm leaning towards, right? As a trader, we all are going to have the things that we're leaning towards, the probabilities that we see in front of us, but overall, we just want to pay attention in the crash scenario for that 50 to cross that 200, and that just hasn't happened right now. I've said it a bunch, so I know it's really getting ingrained into at this point. Right now, it really looks like we want to see a dip lower in the VIX. We're starting to see some bullishness step in. Doesn't mean we can't get some kind of hip fire move up tomorrow. And then if we are getting that crash scenario, you are going to see this 50 cross this 200. Okay, so the main takeaway is we did call that little bounce on Monday. Good for us. That's fine. Give yourself a pat on the back, right? Good job. But we could head to lower levels to find some buyers before we want to make that full-fledged recovery and start to see a bull run. Now, we talked about this in the past, how we don't normally just bottom in one day and then start to skyrocket. So it would make sense for us to see some selling step in. We're hitting that 5-day moving average. Maybe we come down, find some more buyers, and then maybe that's enough to start to push us to higher levels. Be looking out for that Fed rate decision. It's very important. And Apple earnings, the biggest stock in the world, is going to be very important as well. So those are the two things we need to be paying attention to. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Good luck in all your trades tomorrow and have a great night. All right. Peace.